So the other day, Crystal went on News Nation and embarrassed Leland Vittert in a now viral segment on the issue of Israel and Gaza. And then after that, Cenk went on News Nation and debated Dan Abrams on the same topic. And Abrams, of course, had the stale talking points, the IDF talking points. You can go back and watch the segment. We covered it in great detail. Well, now Cenk went on Piers Morgan's show and debated the same issue of what's happening in Gaza right now. And man, he is furious in this segment. So my understanding is this interview happened directly after Piers Morgan talked to Chris Christie. And of course, Chris Christie has the standard horrendous, stupid take on this issue. Something you'd hear from literally anybody in Washington, D.C. Cenk appears to come in fired up, and this is quite a back and forth. Let's watch.
Well, joining me now to discuss this is the founder of the world's most influential progressive online channel, The Young Turks, a Democratic presidential hopeful. And that's Cenk Uygur. Cenk, great to have you on the programme. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. I'll be following your tweets with interest this week. You've been getting increasingly angry, I think it'd be fair to say. You said, I'm now enormously frustrated by US and Israeli government's barbaric acts in Gaza. I will not be shy in sharing that opinion on Piers Morgan's show today. Why are you so frustrated?
Yeah. Well, honestly, I didn't expect the framing that you put on this segment, and it's framing like that. That's disgusting. So I don't see what this has anything to do with anti-Semitism. I formed Young Turks and TYT with two Jewish friends who are some of my friends growing up. We've known each other and been brothers for over 40 years now. So I think what Hamas did is disgusting. I cry for those Israeli innocent civilians. But do I see you guys crying for Palestinians? I mean, Chris Christie was just on here treating it like it's no big deal because what, Palestinian lives don't matter? I think the real bigotry here is saying that Palestinians, we can kill 3 times as many of them already. And this is the appetizer. Netanyahu and his barbaric government have not even started the entree of murder and death and mayhem they're about to do. And that's somehow okay, killing 3 times as many Palestinian civilians, let alone the occupation, which is bigotry by definition. We say that everyone in the world can defend themselves, can have their own state, can have sovereignty, except the Palestinians. And the reasoning behind that is the Palestinians are what? They're what? The idea is that they are savages and that Muslims are too violent and cannot control themselves. So they must be occupied for 56 brutal, disgusting years. So I've had enough of the bigotry against Muslims and Palestinians. And I need you to speak out against that instead of covering every outrageous, atrocious action of the right-wing government of Israel and going, oh, it's anti-Semitism. No, and there is global anti-Semitism. There's anti-Semitism here in this country. 2 synagogues were shot at Pittsburgh and in Southern California. We fight against that all the time. But then whenever Israel is criticized, people go, oh, no, it's anti-Semitism. No, there's real anti-Semitism.
Well, okay, Cenk,
and instead of attacking that, all you guys ever do is hide behind the veil of anti-Semitism. Do you know why Palestinians might not like Israelis? Because they've been oppressed for 56 straight years.
I hear you. And let me respond. A, I'm not you guys. I don't think I fit into any neat fit on this issue at all. B, I've actually covered this story, I think, more fairly than most people. I've had many pro-Palestinian voices I've given a huge platform for. They've been getting enormous audiences, from Bassem Youssef to others. And I've done that quite deliberately because I think these voices are important to be heard, including yours. I certainly wasn't accusing you, by the way, or your organisation of anti-Semitism. I have found it, as somebody who's always identified as liberal myself, I found it very dispiriting to see people who call themselves liberals, whose instant response, it seemed to me, to one of the worst terror attacks we've ever seen, was to immediately side with the place where these attacks have been launched from. Now, I don't tar all Palestinians with the brush of being Hamas at all. And in fact, the sooner Hamas are out of there, the better for the Palestinian people and the world. But I just think the only human response you can have is, as you did, by the way, to your credit, is it was disgusting what happened on October the 7th. Now, the question then becomes, what is a proportionate response by Israel? Not just the terror attacks of October the 7th, but obviously there is now a huge ongoing escalation in what has been, as you rightly say, a 56-year war, effectively, in varying degrees over that period. And that's where I think I'm struggling to see how ground invasion by Israel, with all that would entail, particularly mass deaths of Palestinian civilians, how that is going to do anything for any peaceful resolution to this. I think it will have the opposite effect.
He keeps asking this question to every guest he's talked about this issue with, and he thinks it's some sort of like amazing gotcha point. But look, dude, the answer is really simple, but the answer doesn't satiate that feeling for revenge and retaliation and retribution. The answer is exactly what Jocko Willink, the guy's like a former Navy SEAL who's big on the podcast circuit, and he came out and said, you got to stop bombing Gaza right this second. If you really want to get the people who perpetrated this terror attack on innocent Israeli civilians, you flip the population of Gaza into being pro-Israel by giving them material support and help, giving them food and fuel and goods, making friends with them, gaining their allegiance, getting an alliance with them, and then getting them to flip on the specific Hamas terrorists who did this attack. So the answer is good intelligence work, winning over their favor, and then using special forces. It's like, think about it in a different context. Would you, if there was some drug gang, let's say, and they took a hostage at a school, would the right thing to do be to bomb the school with a fighter jet, killing 600 people who were inside? Of course not. That's a really dumb reaction. But that is effectively Israel's reaction. You have these Hamas terrorists who committed a brutal, atrocious, barbaric terror attack, and their reaction is complete and utter collective punishment of all Palestinians in Gaza. There's no defending that. And then, Piers asked this question like, I don't get it. What's a proportional response? Well, clearly a proportional response is not to do a medieval-style siege and cut off food, fuel, and water to over 2 million people who are innocent, who didn't do it. Clearly, that's not the right response. The right response is not to bomb apartment buildings and hospitals and mosques and marketplaces. The right response isn't to shut off aid from getting in there at a time when they need over 1,000 aid trucks and you allow in like 37 of them. That's clearly not the right response. And the frustration from Cenk and everybody who's following this issue closely is like, well, hold on now. In the wake of the Hamas terror attack on Israel, every reasonable person, I stress the word reasonable here, was outraged by the Hamas terror attack, and everybody was on the side of Israel. And then immediately they take all that goodwill and throw it out the window because they're like, Hamas just did collective punishment of all Israelis. Now we're going to go ahead and do collective punishment of all Palestinians. So in other words, the classic, Dave Chappelle said this and got in a lot of hot water. He's like, I thought two wrongs don't make a right is the most basic moral principle of all time. And that's the reality, is they've destroyed their goodwill because now they've killed 4 times as many innocent civilians on the other side, and they're doing it purposefully. That's why you have top Israeli officials who called Palestinians human animals. You have the Israeli president come out and say, there are no innocent civilians in Gaza because they could have done a coup with Hamas and they didn't. So I think they're all as guilty as Hamas. So that's the problem. The answer would be intelligence work, flip the population, special forces. But again, that's not going to satiate, honestly, right now, the feeling for revenge and retribution and retaliation.
Yes. So let's take it one at a time. First of all, as you rightly point out, on Young Turks, we covered the atrocious actions of Hamas right from the get-go, and we condemned it as fully as anyone can possibly condemn it. Because not only are they killing those poor, innocent Israelis that didn't do anything, those little babies and the grandmothers, it's disgusting what they did. But on top of that, they're ruining the Palestinian cause. They've burned the moral high ground to cinders. And then on top of that, they smear all people of Muslim background like myself.
They misspelled Cenk's name here. They put U-Y-G-E-R. It's G-U-R.
And then it unleashes this bigotry of anti-Muslim bigotry throughout the world that I'm sick of. So screw Hamas and their barbarism, okay? Now, in terms of a proper reaction, yes, you need to get those hostages out. So now let's look at I'm going to suggest what to actually do. I'm going to be constructive. But first, let's look at the unconstructive solution that Israel had. Dropping bombs on residential buildings, 50 ambulances.
And let's be clear, it's not just unconstructive, it's terrorism. They know they are targeting innocent civilians, and they don't care. That's the point. So it is terrorism. So I think it's fair to say top Israeli officials and the IDF are terrorists in the same way that the people in Hamas who carried out that terror attack are terrorists.
Ambulances have been hit. 10 out of 25 hospitals don't operate anymore. The incubators are about to run out of.
It's more than that now. I think it's 3/4 of the hospitals in Gaza are not operating now.
There's 45 babies that might die today. The parents, I just read on CNN, are writing the names of the kids on their calves, on their legs, so that if they are killed in a bombing and they're mutilated, they could find their bodies. Imagine writing the name of your child on their legs so that you could find them in the rubble after Israel or any government drops a bomb on them. And I need the West to understand something. Bombs kill people. And do you know how they kill people? They incinerate them alive, or their heads explode. So what happened in Israel was a disaster and disgusting. But you have to be equally honest and equally outraged at the immorality of incinerating babies and grandmothers and aunts and uncles, which is what we're doing right now. America cannot keep sending aid for death and destruction. Enough of the occupation. End it today. End it today. It's monstrous. Okay, I'm going to make a constructive solution.
I completely understand your passion and your anger. I completely get this. I, like you, want to see some resolution at the end of this horror that we're witnessing. How do you get rid of Hamas if you don't do it the way Israel are currently doing it? How do you actually eradicate what has become a nihilistic ISIS-style terror group who've quite deliberately, in my estimation, committed an outrage of such appalling scale that they knew that this would goad Israel into this kind of response? So why they did that, what is motivating it, who might be putting them up to it, who's helped them prepare for this, these are all questions we don't know the answers to yet. But it seems to me that Israel could, if it's not careful, be being lured into a massive trap here. And I hope that is not the case. But I'm curious, how do you get rid of Hamas?
I find this question really stupid, because you'd never flip it in the other direction and say, how do you get rid of the illegal ultra-Orthodox settlers who are willy-nilly stealing Palestinian land on a daily basis in the West Bank? You'd never ask that. You'd never ask, how do you get rid of the IDF terrorists who target civilians on purpose? You'd never ask that. There's always going to be hardliners and arch-conservatives in every nation-state imaginable. You can't get rid of hardcore conservatives. No matter how much you want to, no matter what you try to do, it's similar to the whole problem with the war on terror that we did. How are you going to eliminate terror? That's like waging a war on murder. We're going to wage a war on murder. We're going to end murder. Is that ever possible? Are you ever going to actually end murder? Are you ever going to actually end terror? Are you ever going to actually get rid of Palestinian hardliners? Are you ever going to actually get rid of ultra-Orthodox illegal settler hardliners? You know, IDF hardliner? You're never going to be able to do that. So the question is, what can you do in reality? And in the context of the Hamas terror attack, the thing you can do is target the exact Hamas terrorists who did the attack. And everybody would be on your side if you did that. Again, it's intelligence work, it's trying to flip some of in the local community, and it's doing special forces work. That's what it is. Again, that might not sound sexy or whatever, but that's what you do.
If you don't do it the way Israel is currently doing it, albeit with horrific collateral damage
it's not, they're doing it. Piers, they're doing it on purpose. It is not collateral damage. She's fallen for the massive head fake. This idea that, well, we in the West care about innocent civilians and the barbarians do not. That's laughable at a time when 62% women and children are the victims right now of the IDF bombing campaign. According to their own numbers, there's over 5,000 deaths, and only 13 of them are Hamas. We're talking over 99% killing the wrong people. It's not collateral damage when they decide we're going to do a medieval siege and cut off food, fuel, and water to all of Gaza, 2.3 million people. That's not collateral damage. That is terrorism on purpose.
In the face of thousands of innocent Palestinians being caught up in the bombing.
Yeah. So let me give you a short-term answer, long-term answer. And a lot of people are not going to like these, but these are realistic ways that you minimize civilian casualties. You do what America did with the Osama bin Laden raid. We didn't go drop a nuke on Pakistan. We didn't go destroy 6,000 residential buildings in the middle of Pakistan. We sent in special forces. Is it more dangerous to the special forces? Of course. That's the point of special forces. Try to find the hostages. Does it look like Israel's trying to find the hostages? If I have a family member that's a hostage, I'm disgusted by what Netanyahu's doing.
They fixed his name. They fixed the spelling of his name. Jake Uger. They fixed it in real time. That's awesome.
Now, how do you know they're not in the buildings you're dropping bombs on? How do you know they're not in the tunnels you're dropping bombs on? How do you know they're not in the hospitals you're dropping bombs on? So if you want the hostages rescued, every rational human being can agree this is not the way to do it. This is the way to do death and destruction for the sake of death and destruction. It's collective punishment. It's genocide against Palestinians, and the world has to speak out. So my way is not pleasant either. It involves a lot of folks dying on both sides. I understand that. Those are super hard choices. But go find Hamas. Go find the hostages. Go rescue them instead of wantonly, indiscriminately killing after killing. And let's be honest, when you drop a bomb and a kid's head explodes and a grandmother is incinerated, that is terrorism. Killing 3 times as many civilians as Hamas is terrorism. And it is the same if it is done by a government. Send in as many special forces as you got. We should send in whatever you got to actually do the job at hand instead of what Netanyahu is doing, which is to kill these people to what? Send a message. And think about how unrealistic that is. And think about why his method has a 0% chance of working. How are the Palestinians supposed to rise up against Hamas? How would they prove they're against Hamas? Hamas ended all elections. Hamas ended democracy. So how are the Palestinians supposed to cry uncle? They're already crying uncle, but it's never enough for the bloodthirsty Netanyahu. No, more death of Palestinians, more babies killed. That's what his answer is. And it's this, and the United States of America, I'm running for president here. There's no way in the world I would allow this, sending $105 billion. And it doesn't even go to Israel, Ukraine, or Taiwan. It goes to the defense contractors that bribe these greedy American politicians and then get most of that money. And so the long-term answer is 1967 borders and the biggest walls you've ever seen in your entire life. And no one's allowed to cross to either side. But the Palestinians get their state. It is unconscionable for them not to get their state. And if you're a moral person, of course you believe that the Palestinians are not the only people in the world that cannot govern themselves. If you say that, you are being, by definition, bigoted and a racist. We have to have a two-state solution immediately. If 56 years of occupation and brutalizing these people is not enough, is 57 years going to be enough? Is 156 years going to be enough? I'm asking Israel, not out of hate, out of love. So many of my friends that I grew up with are Jewish. This is not good for them. This is not good for anybody. Please look into your hearts, look and be the moral people that I know you can be. I've been to Passover dinners where you pray for your oppressors. Now, it breaks my heart, but I got to tell you, you got to pray for those you are oppressing. And to say that you are not oppressing the Palestinians after brutalizing them for 56 long years, you're kidding yourself. And as a friend and an ally, I'm trying to get you to wake up and snap out of this trance. You cannot keep doing this. It is ruining your moral fiber.
There you go. There you go. And this thing has gotten crazy views, 2.6 million. That was after 22 hours. Comments are overwhelmingly pro-Cenk. Anyway, really powerful segment there. That last part where he brings up, two-state solution, 1967 borders and the highest walls imaginable. He calls this the Cyprus solution because this is what happened when Turkey occupied Cyprus, which is Greek, and there were all these issues and killings, and then they basically did this thing where they're like, all right, you guys are 60% of the population, you take that side of the island, we'll build a wall, we're 40% of the population, we'll stay here, we'll build a wall, and then there hasn't been much death or violence since. And look, it's not, it doesn't seem like a very modern solution, and most on the left would argue for now a one-state solution, one-state democracy for all, end the apartheid, end the occupation, everybody gets equal rights, we move forward from there. You call the place Israel, Palestine, or something like that. That's like the consensus left position, but he's articulating the old school liberal position of 67 borders and two separate states, equal representation in the UN, big walls, maybe UN peacekeepers. And so I don't know what the proper solution is, but I do know that the status quo is unsustainable, and I do know that what we're witnessing right now is the ethnic cleansing of Palestinians, and it is the most barbaric thing I've certainly seen in my entire lifetime. Hey y'all, do me a favor and like and subscribe. It helps out big time in the algorithm. Click the bell as well for notifications when videos drop, and watch that video on screen right now. You know you want to.